I'd like to welcome my friend and colleague from National LCV, National League of Conservation Voters President, Gene Karpinski. Yesterday, Washington conservation voters and the National League of Conservation Voters made a historic endorsement that we want to share with you this morning. WCV and National League of Conservation Voters together are endorsing Jay Inslee for governor of Washington. I'm going to turn it over to Gene to say a few words. Before he does that, let me say this is the earliest our organization has ever made an endorsement in our almost 30-year history. And let me tell you why. We've never had a champion like Jay Inslee. Jay literally wrote the book on leadership and clean energy, and we are so proud to stand side by side with you on the campaign trail. Jay, thank you.
Thanks, Brandon. It's great to be outside of the other Washington, because in this Washington, you could actually talk about hope and do it with a straight face. Because it's a little difficult back there these days, but that's a longer story. But it's great to be here. So historically, the National League works on national elections. In fact, we've endorsed members of Congress and candidates on both sides out here in Washington State, federal candidates, for many, many years. But we rarely get involved in state races, and certainly not in governor's races, because that's the job of the state leagues, which they do so well. In fact, I look back, we hadn't endorsed in a governor's race in more than 30 years. But a little bit of history, we actually looked in, we were founded in 1970. And in that first year, the National LCV endorsed in a governor's race in the neighboring state of Idaho. Now, the young folks won't remember, but there's this amazing person named Cecil Andrus, who was endorsed in 1970, was a 4-term governor of the state of Idaho, a great conservationist, was also Secretary of the Interior. So, Jay, those are some actually interesting shoes we'd love to see you fill. A real hero on our issues for many, many years, and that was our first step out. But we don't usually do this, because the states do that and we do federal elections. But this race, from our perspective, is special, incredibly special. And that's why for the first time in more than 30 years, we're going to endorse and help elect Jay Inslee to be the next governor of the great state of Washington. So, we have a score, just as the State League has a scorecard, we have a scorecard as well. And guess what? Jay Inslee, last Congress, 100%. 100%. Way to go. But more importantly, yes, he votes right all the time, but as Brendan said, and as the theme of this whole breakfast is all about, Jay is a champion. Yes, he wrote the book, but he's every day on that committee, on the floor, working his colleagues, making those speeches, putting new bills in, showing the vision and leadership. There's not much of that in Congress. I can count on one hand the members of the House of Representatives that are like Jay Inslee every day, working hard as a leader and a champion, trying to get things done in difficult times in Washington, D.C. So we appreciated all the work you did there. And the reason I'm here today is because we want to see that same kind of leadership and vision and courage and tenacity here in Washington State. And we want to help you get elected to be the greenest governor in the United States of America. Thank you, Jay.
And like Gene said, it's not about partisanship at Washington Conservation Voters and League of Conservation Voters. It's about leadership. Please welcome our special guest, Jay Inslee.
Thank you. Thanks, Gene. Thank you. Good morning. Well, I can tell you that I know Cecil Andrus. He is a friend of mine in Idaho, and I'm no Cecil Andrus. But I can tell you this. When I'm done being the governor of the great state of Washington, Washington State will be the cleanest, the greenest, and the leanest state in the history of the United States. That is my pledge to you. And I believe we are not only fully capable of that grand achievement, But we are destined for that grand achievement. I'd like to tell you why. The state of Washington is a unique place, not just in the country, but in the world. And I know the country because I fly across it 40 times a year, Monday and Friday. We're unique because we have fused two great virtues that are unique, really, in human history. One is a virtue of understanding the natural bounty that we have and embracing it in every burg and city that we have. No other people embrace the mountains and the clean water and the salmon as we do in the state of Washington. And as a result, we've given the world great advocates for the natural bounty like Jim Whittaker. But we've fused that with another great virtue, and that's the virtue of an unbridled, unstemmed, infinite power of innovation and entrepreneurial zeal that have led in two great industrial revolutions, the aeronautics revolution and the software revolution. And now the first thing we're going to do, and I'm going to mention three things we're going to get done with your help as governor. The first thing we're going to do is going to lead the world, as we did in the first two industrial revolutions, in the clean energy revolution. It is our destiny to lead the world in clean energy. We are going to lead the world in clean energy, and the day will come when the world comes to Washington for solar cells, clean biofuels, electric lithium-ion batteries, ultracapacitors, tidal power, and you name it. This is our destiny. We're going to fulfill it. And it is. And you can see the very first steps of that revolution today on the shores of Lake Washington, where Energy 2 is leading the world in lithium-ion battery ultracapacitors. In Moses Lake, where we're the world's Western Hemisphere's largest producer of substrate for silicon-based solar cells. In Soto and Spokane, where McKinstry is going to be $1 billion company leading the world in energy efficiency. We can see the seeds of an industrial revolution that is going to lead the world in job creation, and we know that that is what is in job number one on our constituents' minds today, is this great economic collapse that we have suffered. And for those who will say that clean energy is the problem of our economy, I want to say clean energy is the answer to our economic problems. And we need to say that boldly. And by the way, one of my colleagues the other day in the House said, we can't compete with China. You come to Washington State, we're going to beat China, okay? Not only are we going to compete with China. So that's the first thing we're going to do. The second thing we're going to do, with your help as governor, is we're going to make smart transportation choices. We know in the state of Washington that we just aren't making any more dirt. We are geographically limited. And because we are geographically limited, we need to make our transportation corridors more efficient, more effective, more user-friendly. And to do that, we have to design systems that enhance the ability to have public transportation, enhance the efficiency of our road corridors, and give people more options. Now, that is a forward-thinking path of transportation that we are on. But there is a threat to that forward-thinking path. There is someone who wants us to go backwards. There is someone who wants the state to abandon common sense, forward-thinking transportation policies. And I'm here to tell you, we are going to say no to Tim Eyman at long last when we get this initiative 1125. It is time. I think it's time that we have someone else running the state of Washington other than Tim Eyman. And I think we should start building bridges instead of thinking about building Tim Eyman's bank account. That's what I think, okay? And this is a serious issue. Look, we aren't going to have a way to finance the 520 bridge or the Columbia crossing. This initiative is going to kill light rail. This initiative is a camouflaged attempt of those folks who for decades have tried to kill light rail in this state. We're going to move forward, not backwards, on transportation policy. And I urge you to help me to make sure we get this thing done. Third is Puget Sound. I'm a fifth-generation son of the state of Washington. And this is something that's very deep, flowing through our veins in the Inslee household. And I just want to share a story of how I think of Puget Sound. When I was thinking about whether to run for this office, it was not the easiest decision. I like what I'm doing. It's frustrating as it is. I like working with Adam Smith, who's going to be a tremendous chairman of the Armed Services Committee. And this is a great thing for the state of Washington, by the way. Adam's going to make sure that the Pentagon is the greenest military force in human history. Thank you, Adam. I appreciate that. But I went for a walk on the shores of Kitsap County where I live, and I took my 2.5-year-old grandson, Brody. And we were out walking, and Brody was doing what he does so well, which is turning over rocks. So he'd turn over rocks, and he'd see a crab or a limpet or a little worm in there. And I could just see his face just light up, just lit up with that feeling of adventure and exploration that happens in the natural world. And I had a flashback. I just had a flashback to when I was 4 or 5 years old, going out to Carkeek Park with my dad. He was a biology teacher at Garfield and South. And I remember him telling me about these little critters under the rocks, and I remember being just as excited as Brody was. And it struck me then, and it strikes me now, that it would be a grand legacy, a very sweet reward for our short time here in this great state, to lead a legacy of Puget Sound to my grandkid and his grandkid for generations to come. And of all the things we do individually and as families and as communities, it strikes me that leaving a state that is truly evergreen could be our greatest legacy that we would have in our short period of time here. And that is no more profoundly in question than in Puget Sound, where we face the issue of stormwater, which I pledge to you to work to solve this problem of stormwater. And when we do that, that will be a sweet reward. Now, one brief closing comment about where we are right now. We are in a moment of great doubt. We are in a moment of great anxiety. We are in a moment of great frustration. Many of us have heard the grumbling that's taken place of our lack of being able to make progress in many of our democratic institutions. And we don't know where they're going to win races, this initiative of 1125, governor's races, senator races. And it reminds me of the moment when I was with Jay Blumenthal, who did tremendous work passing our Renewable Energy Initiative 937. And we were in some office building downtown, and people were thinking, gee, we don't know if we can really pass this. You know, the Koch brothers may put a lot of money in against it, like they're going to put money in against me. And by the way, I think we own the state of Washington, not the Koch brothers, okay? That's what I believe. And we were thinking, is this something we can really do? And it was a moment of question and doubt. But we stopped worrying about it and got to the barricades and did something about it. In November 2012, it's going to give us a chance to stand up for everything that we hold true. And if you stand up with me in a governor's race, I'm going to give you someone that's going to get up every single morning committed to making sure Washington State is the evergreen state then, the evergreen state now, and the evergreen state forever. Let's go win one. Thanks a lot. Take care. Thanks, guys. Hey, buddy. Thank you. Thanks.